Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this virtual luncheon hosted by the Peabody Essex Museum. I am so excited to get started today. My name is Tiffany. I am the anchor over at WBZ Channel 4. We have an awesome and vibrant conversation for us today. This virtual event really offers an opportunity to unite new and longstanding friends of the Peabody Essex Museum and celebrating the historical significance of the Yu Kil Chun Gallery of Korean Art and Culture, which is debuting in May 2025. We're going to be exploring various perspectives and themes of valor, diplomacy, and friendship. These are all qualities exemplified by Yu Kil Chun's life in the early days of Korean diplomacy and also friendship in the United States. I did some research about him. Pretty cool to learn about that. He's among the first Koreans to come to the United States and the first Korean to study here in the United States, here in Massachusetts. So I'm very excited for everyone here to learn more about this. We really hope that this event will inspire attendees to support the new gallery, but also to promote Korean art and culture and to foster a greater sense of community here. So just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. We want the attendees in the room, which I see 132 of you. We really want you to also, ask some questions, get involved in the conversations. We'd love to answer some at the end of this Q&A as well. So on your Zoom screen, you should see the Q&A button. So throughout this conversation, we'd really love for you to drop some questions in there. Let us know what you're curious about, what you want to know. And so, without further ado, I'm going to introduce some of my co hosts today. We do have a pretty awesome group of people. We have Consul General Kim Jae Hee and also Mayor of Salem, Dominic Pongalo. So, Mayor, please give your remarks. Love to hear from you.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Tiffany. First, let me say what an honor it is to join the Consul General and all of you for this special event. On behalf of the City of Salem, happy Lunar New Year and welcome to everyone who's joined us this afternoon. Salem is enriched and made stronger by the many cultures of the diverse people who comprise our historic city and by the bonds of international friendship that have made us a more prosperous community, commonwealth, and country. Among those who've been so important to Salem's progress are our Korean and Korean American community members whose contributions have lifted up our city for generations. As one of America's oldest cities, Salem is home to many firsts, and one of those is the distinction of having welcomed the first Korean diplomat to the United States 142 years ago. And like so many of Salem's stories, that visit has a direct connection to the incredible Peabody Essex Museum. In 1 year, we'll celebrate Salem's 400th anniversary, and the vibrancy and reputation of Salem has, for so many of those centuries, been tied to PEM and its predecessor institutions. From a small group of sea captains and merchants to a world-renowned museum of art and culture, PEM's growth has contributed to Salem's growth. Again, it's a privilege to be with you all and to co-host this discussion alongside Consul General Jae Hee. Consul General, thank you for being a friend to Salem, the Peabody Essex Museum, and this country. I'll now turn it over to the Consul General.
And Consul General Jae Hee, we'd love to hear from you as well. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Very good afternoon. Thank you very much. Sorry for my a little bit mishandling my equipment. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for your very warm words. It is a great honor to co-host this meaningful conversation with the Honorable Mayor of Salem. And warm welcome, warm greeting to everyone to today's great conversation. First and foremost, I would like to wish you all Happy New Year's, as tomorrow marks the celebration of the Lunar New Year's. The city of Salem and the Peabody Essex Museum hold a very special and cherished place in the heart of all Korean. It was here in the 19th century that the seed of educational and cultural bond between Korea and United States were sown, paving the way for the enduring friendship and also the alliance between our two countries. We eagerly anticipate the reopening of the Yugilchun Gallery at the Peabody Essex Museum in upcoming May. It would be, I'm quite sure, a space that will beautifully honor and showcase the invaluable history and memories shared by our two countries. Today, I'm looking forward to reflecting on this beautiful story with all of you, and I humbly encourage your support for this important initiative, which not only celebrate our shared history, but also for the strengthening the ties that have united us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to see this exhibition too, so thank you for your remarks. So we're going to get into our panel discussion now. We have an awesome group of people here. We're going to be discussing valor, diplomacy, and friendship. So I'm going to be introducing each of you today. We have CEO and Executive Director of the Peabody Essex Museum, Linda Hardigan. We have the President of the Patriots Foundation, Josh Kraft. We have Middlesex County District Attorney Marion Ryan. We have Boston City Councilor Ed Flynn, and we also have Dr. Jay Jang. So I'm going to introduce each and every one of you, and please say a little bit about yourself, your work, and what this topic means to you. So we are going to start with Linda Hardigan. Hi, Linda.
Hi there, Tiffany, and thank you. And thank you, Consul General Kim and Mayor Pangalo, for your support and your friendship to me and the Peabody Essex Museum. More broadly, your support of the Korean American community is deeply, deeply appreciated. And I also want to thank my fellow panelists for generously sharing your stories. And welcome to all of our visitors and listeners, more than 100 strong, I understand. I know that this will be a moving and inspirational time together. So I made my first trip to Korea just this past September, and I so returned with a greatly expanded awareness of the achievements and resilience of the country and the Korean people, as well as for, Korea's extraordinary legacies of art, culture, and history. The museum, as people have already mentioned, has had a long and very special relationship with Korea, and that really was what was making this trip so meaningful to me. PEM is the oldest continuously operating museum in this country, but even more relevant for our time together today is the fact that the Peabody Essex Museum is the first American museum to collect Korean art. So I'm very excited to yet again tell you that we're opening our major new gallery of Korean art and culture on May 15th, and we are all working hard to ensure its success. And I extend an invitation to each and every person to come and see the new installation. And as a result, obviously, today's conversations about valor, friendship, and diplomacy are very timely. So I'd like to share the remarkable story of how the friendship between our two nations and two very specific men began right here in Salem nearly 150 years ago. In 1883, Yu Kil-chun came to Salem, which was an international port city at the time, as part of the first diplomatic delegation to the United States from Korea. Yu remained in Salem for about a year and a half as the first international student scholar from Korea in the United States. And it's actually kind of interesting to recall that he wasn't just a diplomat, he was also a young married man who'd left his family behind in order to have this experience. During this time, Yu befriended and was mentored by Edward Sylvester Morris, who was the very prestigious director of one of the museum's predecessor organizations. And before returning home, Yu did give to Morris a selection of his personal belongings for the museum. And so inspired by their interactions, Morris went on to immediately acquire from Korea directly more than 200 objects, and they became the foundation of what is now our renowned Korean collection. Morris and Yu continued their relationship. They corresponded for several years after Yu was back in Korea. And during that time, in his letters, Yu shared details of this very painful time in Korea's Joseon history. Now, during my trip to Korea with our curator of Korean art, Ji-yeon Kim, and our chief philanthropy officer, Soo Kim, we actually had tea with the great granddaughter of Yu Kil-chun and her husband. It was a very moving and emotional visit for all of us, and truly it was the highlight of the trip for me. All of these generations later, here we are in the 21st century, the ties of friendship and cultural exchange that took place between Salem and Korea, and the mutual desire to preserve and to celebrate this critical chapter of history, heritage, and friendship really did shine through on that occasion. So, as PEM's director, I am working with my colleagues here and counterparts and supporters in Korea and in the United States to ensure that this great legacy continues and becomes much more widely known. It's an honor and privilege to help make that possible. Thanks, Tiffany.
Linda, thank you so much. Next, we have the president of the Patriots Foundation, Josh Kraft. Hi, Josh. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Tiffany, thank you for having me, and I appreciate being here. I do apologize, I have to drop off after my remarks, but I want to thank the other panelists. I want to thank Pem for having me, and then, of course, my good friend who recruited me for this, who is my link and understanding of the Korean community, Linda Champion, who's taught me so much about the community uh, and asked me to do this panel. So, we're going to talk about valor, bravery, diplomacy, and one. I thought I'd tell a story that actually, and friendship, as well as friendship, that actually entails all of these at these values, but the story is really on the ground level between two people from who were in the midst of warfare. So we'll go back to World War II, and a couple weeks after the Normandy invasion, the D-Day invasion, there was a young Army Air Ranger named Jack Tuller from Utah. And Officer Tuller, he actually went on to get the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Silver Star for his service in World War II, and then became one of the first members of the Air Force, which started shortly after World War II. But in those days, as he, in his own words, he was a scared kid. And he grew up playing the trumpet in his home state of Utah and was in the Brigham Young Youth Orchestra. So he brought his trumpet with him because he thought, look, if I end up in a POW camp, I'm going to play the trumpet for my fellow POWs to relieve stress and let them relax a little. But that night, it was 2 weeks after D-Day, as I said. They were in an apple orchard, a field in Normandy, and they were under heavy sniper fire. And that night, he, in the midst of all the craziness, he put his weapon down and started playing his trumpet. And they were pretty sure there was one sniper that had a bead on where him and his people were. But remarkably, when he started playing the trumpet, the shooting stopped. They went to sleep, and in the next morning, his folks, some of the people from the U.S. Army, the Allied forces, had rounded up some German soldiers. And as they brought them to their camp, one of the soldiers, a young sniper, in broken English, said, "Who was playing the trumpet last night?" And they brought Jack Tuller forward. And this young sniper broke down crying when they brought Jack to him. And he said, that song you played, Lily Marlene, was a song of me and my young wife that we were married to. And he broke down crying and said, I had to stop shooting when I heard the beautiful music. And Jack Tuller goes on to say, look, he realized this guy was not my enemy. He was a frightened kid, just like I was. And I'm glad I was able to do that to save his life and ours. And Mr. Tuller went on to have a distinguished career in the military, passed away in 2016 at 95, still with that trumpet that he had as a youth that he traveled through World War II with. So there's no more powerful story of friendship, bravery, valor than that. And thank you again for letting me be a part of this. And thank you to all my fellow panelists.
Josh, thank you. I think that's a perfect example of how the arts and the music really does foster these relationships and friendships. So thank you, Josh, for those remarks. Next, we have Middlesex County District Attorney Marion Ryan.
Hi, Tiffany. Thank you for including me today, and I'm happy to see my fellow panelists. And I as well thank Linda Champion, who really keeps us so informed and so involved in so many of these. You know, I'm really struck by both what Linda and what Josh were talking about. And those really were stories about people, because I have a similar story. And I think it is a story not only of friendship and of bravery, but I hope it is one that informs the work I do every day, because I literally would not be here without what happened in this story. My father, when he was about 18 years old, he'd grown up in East Cambridge, a very traditional ethnic part of the city. And he was drafted in the midst of the Korean War and took off on a train for California, and then got on a boat and went to Korea. And as he often told my kids, he couldn't text their grandmother when he got there to say he was there, because there was none of that. And he was there for a long time, and he was in the Army, he was on the ground. And on one particular day, he was involved in a real firefight. He and a few of the people he was with had been separated from their platoon. They were under a lot of enemy fire. He had managed to get himself and a few of other people to a safer place. They got away. They were able to get further to safety, and he was hit. He was hit and then really suffered life-changing injuries. Terrible leg wounds, and lost a part of his foot. He could not get up and leave where he was, and really had no hope of getting out of there, except for a Korean soldier who came and found him and helped him to deal with those wounds right there, got him out of that area, was able to cover him with his own fire and getting him away from there, and ultimately got him to a place where he could be evacuated to safety. And that soldier stayed with him until he was in a place where he was able to be treated. He eventually came back to the United States, went through a long rehab from those injuries, and then decided to re-enlist and go back to Korea for another 2 years, and found that soldier who he had become friends with that day. They didn't know each other before. And he spent another 2 years there, I think, really because he always felt that he owed a debt to the Korean people. And when he came home, that friendship continued until that soldier died many, many years later. They would write and talk back and forth over the years. And that's a great story of friendship. But I think for me and the impact on my work, we continued to live in that area where my dad had grown up, but I think it always gave my dad a much more global view of the world. He never forgot that he literally owed his very existence to someone very different from him, from halfway around the world, that he had not known or really had a conversation with until that day. And we grew up with a much more open, accepting view of the world. And now, as the district attorney of Middlesex County, one of the most diverse counties in the country, where we have schools where people speak 89 languages, we have enormous immigrant populations across our county. I think every day about the fact that part of my job is reducing the number of people who might ever wonder, do they belong here? Are they accepted? Can they contribute what they have? Because had it not been for that soldier contributing his own bravery and his valor in fighting off the enemy while he got my dad to safety, I literally would never have the opportunity to do this job. So this is very personal to me. I continue to feel that debt that my father felt. I am so looking forward to seeing this exhibit at the museum, and I'm really honored to be a part of this program. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I was actually jotting down some questions listening to your remarks, so we'll get to that in a little bit, but thank you so much. Next, we have Dr. Jay Jang. Hello.
Hello, hello. Okay, thank you for invitation. Thank you, Mr. Craft, also DA Ryan. I think your father actually really combat friend with my father. My father was also in exactly the Korean War soldier injured in a battle. So I think my father and your father was some connected to each other somehow. Let me because I belong to Korean community anyway, so let me talk about how those human stories and also human connections really matter in international relations. Is my thought. That's also my job in my UMass Boston as well. I think national security and also the international diplomacy should be human-centric. For just example, the Soviet Union collapsed not because they failed in their geostrategic chess game with America, but because they failed to deliver human securities in home and abroad. Often our thought of international relations is too detached from human stories on the ground, just like purely macroeconomists looking only at market data or big trend without listening to the voices of individual humans in the market. So security if we forget that the human-centric view, I think we can't understand the people in the other side, whether they are our friends or our enemy. It also implies that the international relations is actually rooted in the human connections, people-to-people friendship in grassroots level, not just the intergovernmental relations. So let me share some of my personal experiences. Initially, as a military planner in South Korea, I thought I knew well about North Korea, but actually it was incorrect. About 10 years ago, I actually invited North Korean refugees to train entrepreneurship because many of them failed to adjust in the new capitalist economy, and their suicide rate was alarmingly high. But anyway, I had many chances to have personal conversation with them. Only after listening and reading their personal stories and connected emotionally with them, then I understood North Korea. I think this type of deep understanding is vital, not just for humanitarian purposes, but also for national security planning and also diplomacy. The importance of the personal connections is even more clear in friendship like US-Korea relations. Our nonprofit organizations organizes annual event called the Bridging Generations. We bring together Korean War veterans, like D.A. Williams' father, and also the Korean, along with the Korean children, to share stories. Korean children chat with the American, great grandfathers, and also listen to their personal stories during Korean War. And also they give their handwritten letters to the war veterans.
Mm.
Of course, their letters have a lot grammar errors and also many, children's drawings, but cute and powerful messages to the hearts and mind of the Americans and their families too. A veteran news article wrote, just quote, "We are proud of what we did in Korea, but very proud of you, our legacy," is what they said. Their personal connections actually transcended to the level of international diplomacy, actually. In 2016, one of their handwritten letters was used by Korean President Park Geun-hye at the time during her state visit to President Obama. It shows how personal ties can help strengthen the international relations like U.S.-Korea alliance. Of course, Korean children were not official diplomats, but their contribution was very powerful. My experiences show that human-centric, human connections and also stories are core part of alliance and diplomacy. And in this sense, the friendship between Yoo Gil-jun and the Morse is not a forgotten history, I think. I think their stories keep going in the hearts and mind of Koreans and Americans. And today, even today, I think Korean arts facilitate human connections between Koreans and Americans. So I really praise Peabody Essex Museum for your initiative of the Yoo Gil-jun Gallery. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your remarks. And lastly, we have Boston City Councilor Ed Flynn. Hi, Councilor.
Hi, Tiffany. It's great to be with you and want to say thank you for the invitation, to say thank you to our mutual friend Linda Champion as well for inviting me and the other panelists. Honored to be here. I also want to highlight and thank the PBD Essex Museum, the important contributions they continue to make. We celebrate Korean art and culture today as well. The topic of valor, diplomacy, and friendship is a topic that is of great interest to me, as the others have shared. Stories of valor, diplomacy must be engraved in our hearts and shared with generations to come as well. Those stories need to be shared. And I listened closely to all of the panelists and want to say thank you to the district attorney as well for her moving comments about her family, in support of bringing people together from diverse backgrounds. I had the opportunity when I was a young man, a teenager, to join the U.S. Navy. And I stayed in the Navy for almost 25 years. And my neighborhood in South Boston is a very patriotic community. I guess that's one of the reasons I joined. I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself. And following the September 11th terrorist attacks, even as an older person, I guess, I wanted to volunteer on active duty, which I did. I served overseas in the Persian Gulf and other areas throughout the country. But what I was most impressed really was the diversity of the U.S. military, the people that make up the U.S. Armed Forces, men and women. including trans people as well, from various backgrounds, all serving, sacrificing, putting themselves on the line. And I think of these young men and women, mostly Asians, I think of, because I also represent the largest Asian community here in Boston, in Chinatown in the South End. During the pandemic, we saw a lot of hate crimes, and I worked with the district attorney on hate crimes and supporting survivors. But we saw a lot of hate crimes here in the most progressive state in the country, practically, but we saw them across America. And I'm thinking to myself, the grandsons and granddaughters of these Asian people that are being attacked, they're serving in harm's way in the United States military, defending freedom, defending democracy. And here their parents are, or grandparents, or friends in great cities like Boston or Chicago or San Francisco, New York. They're being attacked because they're Asian, they're Korean, they're Chinese. I think a lot of that happened because of the administration in Washington basically blaming the Chinese or blaming the Asian community for this pandemic. We certainly saw the rise in hate crimes. But I think it's important for us to acknowledge the incredible contributions as well of the AAPI community, of the Korean community. Their service, their sacrifice is exceptional. And sometimes we overlook that. And sometimes that we refer to the Korean War as the forgotten war. But those are real heroes to many of us. And the people of Korea and the people of the United States have a wonderful friendship built on trust, admiration, in freedom and democracy. So I wanted to share that story and wanted to say thank you to everybody here for bringing us together and bringing out the best in people and not focusing on the narrow issues that tend to divide Americans. Thank you.
Counselor, thank you so much. And to the 160 participants in this Zoom, I do want to say that once we get into the question and answer, I'd love for, for you to drop some questions in there so we can include you in this conversation too. My first question goes to Linda. We see how art is a way for people to connect. We see how art is a way for people to explore different cultures and different countries. How is this exhibit? Why is it so important for people to stop by to learn about the history of Korean culture? Everybody's into K-pop. People love Korean dramas on Netflix now, but learning about the history is so important too. So why is this exhibition so important in learning about history of the Korean community?
Well, thanks for the question, Tiffany. And the collection that we'll be showing really focuses on 19th century and early 20th century Korea, which was a real period of disruption and transition and change for this culture. And I think, the various people, even, Mr. Kraft talking about that word human-centric came up. And when people make art, I genuinely think they are doing it to communicate that it's not just for them, but they are sharing their views and their reactions to what's going on around them in hopes that it will actually connect with other people. So the material in the gallery is really intended to help people enter into a period of history that became so formative for the Korea that we know today, and that it's real people who made these things in order to communicate with others, whether within their own community or well beyond, like into another country, the way we represent having the gallery here in the United States. So it's because I really do feel that creativity is a tie that can bind us all. And if there's one thing that history can show us, that, there's some mistakes and wonderful things about the past that we can learn from so that we can have, and a more enriched present, a more informed present, and hopefully build a better future.
And Dr. Jang, do you want to touch upon how kind of art and even music is a really great way to learn more about Korean history and even, the Korean culture?
Sure. I'm First of all, I'm not an artist. I'm not expert in Korean art. In fact, just I was born in country area and rural country of South Korea and became military officer. So really, in my early life, I couldn't understand the practical value or non-artistic value of the art. Simply, I thought that, oh, art was just no more than luxury, or maybe useful only for my nice chatting with my potential girlfriends, all kind of things. But as I told before, I really, just through my experiences, I told with North Korean students and others, I realized, oh, actually the art is actually the best way to connect each other emotionally. And also artists are sort of talented people who communicate, with others. And of course, they use various mediums like literature, music, fine arts and sculpture and ceramics also. Um, in that sense, I think the really good relationship between countries and the need of shared stories or shared memories. Then artists, whether or not they really intentionally do so or not, but they really contribute tremendously to that type of international relations. Um, for example, I think the currently many American friends around me really, pay attention to Korea, perhaps not because of Korean officials. I'm sorry to Consul General, Kim, but I think mostly, BTS or Blackpink or some other Korean artist or pianist Jo Sung Min kind of. So I think that is the real value of art in. So I think the Peabody Museum is really doing great job in really displaying the Korean art, not just the aesthetic value, but actually really storytelling. How Korea began to be connected with the United States, through those personal stories each other. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And my next question is for DA Marion Ryan and also Counselor Ed Flynn. We talked about how a lot of this exhibit is about making people feel more connected and making sure that the Korean community's voices are heard. Is there anything that people should keep in mind? And how do we make sure that the Korean community feels connected? How do we amplify their voices? I know how I try to do it in news by sharing their stories. But I know you two are out in the community all the time. I see you out at a lot of events as well. So let's start with DA Ryan. Can you expand on how we can help Koreans feel more connected in our community?
I think it is partly what you said. I think it is recognizing things. I think it also has to come from people themselves of being open to that. I think it's recognizing what you don't know and taking advantage of the opportunity, for instance, through this exhibit to learn more. And it's always my hope that it is a process that just continues. You go, you look, you learn, that sparks some curiosity either in you or in your children to take another step, to read another book, to go see another movie. And I think that's what's important. And calling those things to the attention of others. I think for both Councillor Flynn and I, we have the opportunity to be out, to learn those stories, and then through our work to be able to give voice to them and to magnify them to other parts of the community. And that's really the privilege that we have of being able to take that information and share it.
And Counselor Flynn, to add to that, I see you out at communities all the time, community events all the time, and I know you connect a lot with, the Korean community. Can you talk about how through those interactions, how are ways that people at home can feel like they can get to know the Korean community a bit better?
Well, thank you, Tiffany. Programs such as this of educating residents and educating neighbors in telling the story of the Korean and Korean American community here in Massachusetts and throughout the country, and letting people know what that history is all about, letting people know about the contributions Koreans have made building this country, building this state, contributing, whether it's in music or art or business or academia or teaching, but the Korean and Korean Americans, it's important for people to know your story because you have a unique story. And oftentimes we don't like to promote ourselves. We don't like to give ourselves credit, but it's important for you to tell your story. Oftentimes because I represented a large Asian community and I'm very familiar with the Chinese culture, especially, they don't like to praise themselves or they don't like to boast about things, but it's important for people to recognize that the Korean community in the AAPI community, you're American and you're American just as much as I'm American, and you're not something other. And we have a tendency in this country, in my opinion, to think of the AAPI people almost as not full-blooded American for some reason, but knowing your contributions and knowing your sacrifices that you've made building this country changes that perception for many people. So maybe that might be a little maybe it'd be a little helpful continue to tell those positive stories.
Thank you, Counselor. And this question is from the Q&A box, and it is directed to Linda. Who is your intended audience for this upcoming exhibition? And were there any challenges or even surprises in its reopening?
Oh boy. Well, of course, my goal is to have as many people as possible come and see this. So we have a very open, inclusive approach to our definition or consideration of audiences. So certainly what I'm hoping is that there'll be this incredible mix of Koreans and Korean Americans and other Americans and people from other countries who will come and see the installation and have it be part of their lives and really a memorable part of the visit to the museum. And our curator Xion Kim has worked closely with members of the community. She's working hard on how it is that we incorporate voices from within the community. That just goes back again to this whole notion of the human story. So for me, all human beings are welcome to come and share in this because to Councilman Flynn's point, the more that we're able to share and to bring into the same room together through connection, the more that I think the story that this culture can help us understand it becomes even more amplified. Oh, and you asked about surprises and challenges. For me, especially with the trip to Korea, I was so struck when I was there among the museum professionals, the press we encountered, the academics. The story of Yu Kil Chun and this relationship between the two countries is deeply, deeply known. And I want it to be as deeply known here but I was really gratified and reassured and, reaffirmed in terms of how important it is for us to be doing this project.
Thank you so much. There was another question in this chat. We explored the themes of valor, diplomacy, and friendship, and how Yukil Chun's his opportunity to come here to the United States, to see the United States and study here is all because of those three themes. There was someone in the chat who wants to know, and this I can open this up to anybody, any of the panelists, but how can we do the reverse? How can people in Massachusetts then learn more about the Korean culture? I know obviously coming to the exhibit is one awesome way to learn more and see things, in real life, but are there other ways and other opportunities that people can go and learn more about this culture? Perhaps Dr. Jang can answer this, or I'm going to open this up to anybody else on the panel.
Thank you. Just on something different channel. Sorry. We I think there's some way there's some grassroots level exchange. People bringing some art and culture to Boston area, especially through education. I think a really good way to help the just ordinary um, Americans in Massachusetts, ordinary people in Massachusetts learn Korean culture. Maybe just one example. We launched the really before the pandemic. During the pandemic, we launched the Step Up program. It's actually the academy education program for the immigrant students in mostly heavily underserved community in just Brockton, and of course they are not aware of Korean culture at all. Many of them didn't know Korea much, and a lot of Korean volunteers, of course, Korean American here, and also from Korea. A lot of people, mostly college students, in some including high school students, came here. They actually taught not only just math and science, but also the K-pop and taekwondo, kind of culture. Really, the kids loved that culture. Even many of them requested to open some Korean language or Korean drama class as well. It's really very responsible. Then many of them also wish to travel Korea simply to learn Korean culture as well. So I think that way, of course, currently the Peabody Essex Museum's initiative really a driving force to help really introduce Korean culture here. But at the same time, not just the professional artists, but also ordinary non-artist people like me also have some roles, really introduce or facilitate the exchange of culture between Korea and United States through education or business or even many other ways. So that's my thought. Thank you. Yeah.
And you actually spoke a little bit about, K-pop and everything like that. So I guess my next question is for Linda. Do you think more modern art, I guess if you could call art like K-pop and K-dramas, do you think that has actually spread more awareness, that people are more curious about the Korean culture? Have you seen that at all, that they want to come in and see what that's all about because they've watched a show on Netflix, or, they're more inclined to learn more about, Korean, I don't know if it's skincare or if it's music or their celebrities. Have you seen those two cross?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And sometimes when something's very vibrant in the moment, it makes you curious about the past. So I think it definitely has opened up doors. And let's face it, we also live in this incredibly robust highway of media opportunities in terms of what it is we can find out about. So the fact that it has spread around the world, to me, especially having now been there, the culture itself is just incredibly alive and vibrant and aspirational and determined. And I think, the more the people can experience that, the better. So popular culture can often be, a really great door to open in order to learn more.
And Linda, there was also another question. And how were you able to bring these artifacts and items into the museum? I believe it's over 200 pieces. I know a little bit in my research that a couple of the items were actually left by Yu Kil Chun. Can you explain kind of some of the items and how we were able to bring them over?
So with Yu Kil Chun, one of the things that absolutely fascinates me is that he left his scholar's hat, which is made out of horsehair, and it's quite beautiful. So, we might say, "Oh, he left a hat," but it's just so traditional and representative of a weaving tradition in the country. But Edward Sylvester Morris, as the director of what was then the Peabody Museum of Salem, was really kind of a maverick mind, and he was very active in learning about Asian cultures, especially in Japan and Korea, through a whole circle of people in the Boston area and also through time spent overseas. So he had networks that enabled him to then say, I'm looking for this sort of thing, I'm looking for that sort of thing. And so, without the internet, letters and that sort of thing were the way that he forged the diplomatic relations in order to make it possible to acquire works from a variety of sources in Korea.
And Linda, are you seeing that it's a lot of, people in the Korean community who want to come out to the exhibit to learn their history? Or are we seeing a lot of Salem residents and people who love art? To tie into that, there was also another question in the Q&A. If kids can come for field trips to see it for themselves, can you talk about when this exhibit opens in May, what are the different opportunities and the different spectators that you hope will come and learn more?
So we have a very active school visit program. So yes, anyone who listening to us who has school-age children or is connected with schools, I mean, please make that known because we do welcome, with the help of our guides, all kinds of school groups throughout the year. And yes, there will be some that will focus specifically on this gallery. And we also, whenever we do something like this, or for our temporary changing shows, we host a range of programs that we're in the process of setting up now. So on our website, there'll always be the menu of the programs that we offer publicly in conjunction with not just the opening of the gallery, but as an ongoing part of what we'll be offering as programming, on an annual basis. So lots of opportunities, and as I said earlier, indeed, I hope that Koreans and Korean Americans and Americans and people from other cultures come. So it's meant to be as inclusive as possible.
Thank you so much. And my next question will be for Counselor Flynn. This is inspired by a question in the Q&A. Right now there could be, a lot of people in the Asian community who might feel isolated. Times are uncertain right now. How can people use this exhibit to learn more and perhaps feel more included? People in all different backgrounds.
Yeah, thank you, Tiffany. I think these types of exhibits bring out the best in people, especially people that have never experienced this type of art or culture. It's really a welcoming place for everybody to learn and to develop friendships, to develop develop an understanding of the Korean culture. So I would encourage people, especially people that want to learn more or have very little interaction with Korean culture, it's a perfect opportunity to learn and to study and to listen. I try to, when I go to various events, I try not to talk. I try to listen, because the more I listen to people, the more knowledgeable I become. And I like listening to older people, especially because they have wonderful stories. And you want to ensure that those stories are captured as well. So I think what you're doing here today is exactly what you should be doing in this exhibit. I'm looking forward to attending with my wife and family. And I'll certainly encourage people from Boston to join and visit this wonderful museum in this wonderful city. So I'm just so happy to be here with you, but also to attend the upcoming exhibit.
And DA Ryan, would you like to add to that? I mean, listening to your personal story, I think it really encapsulates valor, diplomacy, and friendship. And I guess that, highlights the importance of sparking the conversation, or perhaps even sharing personal stories so that people can feel more connected and curious about the Korean community.
Yes, I think, I just had the opportunity to be in Europe, and I think something that happens there that we aren't always comfortable with is really striking up conversations with people who are different from us. And, obviously in a respectful way, but hopefully there are things, if people come out to the exhibit, I am one of those people who then tells 5 people that I went and is going to say, did you ever know about this? Or if I see someone, who's more familiar with that, is going to talk about it. I think I am always struck. It is like with Dr. Jang, we both have dads that were in the Korean War. And there are always those links with people. Counselor Flynn knows that value of service. If you just can get past maybe the initial awkwardness of saying something, I think you always find connections and learn. And that's really what I'm hoping these things like the exhibit give people an opportunity to do, make a stronger connection with someone. I think as Americans, we sometimes feel like we know everything. We're good. We've got a good way of doing it, and we don't need to learn about something else. And we don't appreciate all that we don't know. And things like this, I think, are openings for people to really broaden their world's perspective in much the same way that I really believe my family's perspective on the world was broadened by my dad's experience in Korea. And I hope that there is that effect.
Thank you. And my last question goes to Linda. How can we, especially everybody in this chat, all 139 of us, how can we all support Pem and Yu Kil Chun's exhibition? What can we do to come support and probably spread the word as well? What would you like to see happen?
Oh boy, lots and lots of people in the galleries, that's for sure, and regularly, and not just for one time. And as you say, spread the word. I just love what DA Ryan just said about being, open to connecting with people. So spreading the word is really helpful to us. Coming to visit often, in bringing your friends or family members. And, if there's an interest in joining the museum and supporting the museum as we do these kinds of projects, then that's certainly very meaningful to us. But first and foremost, for me, it's really about inviting people to come and really enjoy what we have to offer.
Thank you so much. So lastly, I really want to thank everybody in this panel. I think we've had such a lively conversation. I've learned so much, not only about this exhibit, but everybody in this panel. So thank you so much. I want to thank Consul General Kim Jae-hee, Mayor Dominic Pangallo, Linda, Josh, DA Ryan, Counselor Flynn, Dr. Jay Jang. Thank you so much for being a part of this day. I truly feel like we are really fortunate that The nation's oldest and historically significant museum collections of Korean art and culture exist right here at the Peabody Essex Museum. So it's really no wonder that international students from BU, Tufts, and beyond follow in the footsteps of Yu Kil Chun. They're drawn to Salem and to the museum where the friendship and diplomacy began between Korea and the US and continues to thrive today. As friends and allies, who want to see this history remembered and celebrated for generations to come, PEM's Yukil Chun Gallery of Korean Art and Culture will be a permanent gallery to preserve this important legacy. So let us all find ways to show our support, whether it's telling a friend through word of mouth, posting it on social media, maybe me plugging it on the news. I don't know. We'll have to work together, Linda, for that part. I love to because I think it's so interesting, but PEM really does need our help in this important network of people to help complete this historic gallery. So if you like to make a gift, please use the QR code or the web link on your screen or contact Sue Kim, PEM's Chief Philanthropy Officer. So on behalf of PEM and our host, Consul General Kim, and Mayor Pangallo and our distinguished speakers, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye, and thank you
Bye. Thank
so much.
you.